I think finding your passion, finding where you work best, what kind of environment you work best in, very important to be able to do. And nothing's going to be perfect. Like we all strive for perfection. It's the elusive goal. We just want our next meeting to be a little bit better than the previous meeting. We just want to continuously improve. And I think that's the same with leadership and in your own personal behavior. I'm more than happy to own up to errors that I make because I make a ton of them. I'm old enough to have made most errors that you could make probably. But as long as you can acknowledge that, hey, this was my intent. It didn't turn out that way. Here's what I learned from it, and get some advice and counsel from people about, okay, how would you approach this? I've learned a ton from people in that regard, really, from the standpoint of, well, gosh, I wouldn't have thought about approaching it that way, but it makes perfect sense now.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Jessy James, and today's guest is Kurt Fischer. Kurt is a seasoned human resources executive and trusted advisor to global leadership teams. As chair of the Human Resources Officer Board at the Institute of Corporate Productivity, he guides senior HR leaders in shaping the future of talent, culture, and organizational performance. Previously serving as CHRO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and SVP of HR at Corning and Quest Diagnostics, Kurt brings decades of experience aligning people strategy with mission-driven impact and business excellence. Known for steady leadership and strategic insight, he has helped organizations build strong cultures, effective HR systems, and high-performing teams at scale. Kurt, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
Great, Jessy. Great to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Kurt, I'm curious, who is someone from your early life or even an early experience that shaped the kind of leader that you are today?
Oh boy, I had a lot of them. I mean, I go back to, parents, family, probably a professor at college who believed in me and kind of helped me along, got me my first job, really. And then I was fortunate to have a mentor when I got that job. So the early experiences for me were all very positive. I feel lucky and blessed to have had such good support because, early on, I made a lot of mistakes. Yeah. And it's good to have somebody who believes in you and can forgive and make sure you learn the right lessons.
Is there any particular memory or experience that stands out for you?
Just the normal, when you're out of college and you're used to staying up late and all of a sudden you have a job. And I remember, one time just oversleeping, getting to work really late. And this was at a time where that was not viewed very favorably. So that was a good reminder of time to grow up,
Yeah. How do you think these people and these experiences also inform who you are as a leader today?
Yeah. A lot of what I did early on, I mean, life's about continuous learning, right? So you're just trying to learn from every experience that you have. And a lot of times I would learn leadership lessons mostly focused on, gosh, I don't want to do that when I'm a leader, mostly the negative ones. But then I had a lot of very positive influences early on in my career with folks. I worked at a research laboratory with a gentleman who ran the lab and just taught me a ton about, you can be tough and hold people accountable, but always be respectful and know that as a general rule, their instincts are pure. And try not to be too judgmental, and learned a lot about trust too. Like, how do you build trust in people? So those were all really positive lessons.
Yeah, sound very foundational. I'm curious. So, what does true leadership mean to you? Like, from your experiences, your perspective, what is a true leader all about?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Um, One of the things I did in preparation for this was I was just curious how many books on leadership there were.
Huh.
And Gemini told me it was either hundreds of thousands or millions, which just goes to show that it's very situational, right? Um, and so for me, true leadership is, as you get into these leadership roles, it's so important to know yourself, understand, what part of you is the ego playing, how do you, modify your behavior, emotions. Um, so I think it's you being the person that you want to be, and learning lessons when you stray from that. So, we always talk about, vision, mission, strategy with organizations. The same's kind of true for me with the leadership. Like, what's your vision? What kind of a leader do you want to be? And what's the mission that you're after? I mean, you and I talked previously just about finding your passion, and this is all part of that journey as well.
Can you share about a time when you realized that your way of leading or living no longer met the demands of your work and life and growth was needed?
Um, so there's two things that come to mind. One is, I worked best when I was coming up with, a leader who gave me general directions but didn't micromanage me or tell me how to do things. They let me do that. So I tended to be the same way. And, one of the leadership lessons that I learned early on was don't make assumptions on what people think you want, right? Just try to really strive for clarity. So, so that part was important for me.
Got it. Um, what did you have to sort of outgrow or let go in order to kind of grow and get closer to sort of, your purpose, your vision?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Um, Part of it is you have to be in an organization that you believe in, right? Um, so it's hard to be a great leader if you're surrounded by people that don't share a similar set of values as you. Um, so to me, that's one of the lessons is you can literally be as good as the situation that you're in. So um, I think finding your passion, finding where you work best, what kind of environment you work best in, uh, very important to be able to do. And nothing's going to be perfect, right? Like, we all strive for perfection. It's the elusive goal, right? You just want to. I always say with our CHRO board, we just want our next meeting to be a little bit better than the previous meeting, right? We just want to continuously improve. And I think that's the same with leadership and in your own personal behavior, right? So I'm more than happy to own up to errors that I make, because I make a ton of them. I'm old enough to have made most errors that you could make, probably. But as long as you can acknowledge that, hey, this was my intent. It didn't turn out that way. Here's what I learned from it, and get some advice and counsel from people about, okay, how would you approach this? I've learned a ton from people in that regard, really, from the standpoint of, well, gosh, I wouldn't have thought about approaching it that way, but it makes perfect sense now. And the workforce is much different today than it used to be. My generation, you got out of college and you went to work, and your role was to, get financial freedom, right? That was kind of the game. A little bit different today, and purpose becomes very important. So, we try to model all that in the work that we do.
So thinking about your journey over the past few years, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself for your own growth?
Um, I'll use the skiing analogy. Like our oldest son loved to ski when he was young, and I grew up in a family where we didn't know we were poor, but we didn't have a lot of money, so skiing was totally out of the question. So I started late in life to learn how to ski, and so we would take lessons wherever we went, and I always learned something different from each person. The same's true. I drove race cars for a while, and the same was true. I would always have a coach, and you just learn something each time about how to get a little bit better. And it was the same for me in business. You just you watch somebody who you admire as a leader, and then there'll be a moment where you get a chance to talk with them about, hey, so I approached the situation this way. It didn't get the results exactly like I would have liked. How would you have done it? And Yeah, that I find that whether you call it coaching or just asking questions about how you improve to be really worthwhile.
So, what's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
Hmm. Yeah, that's also such a good question. Um, One of the things that I like now, so I have three organizations that I focus on. We talked about the Institute for Corporate Productivity. Um, I'm on a board of a financial institution, and we're going through a succession process for the CEO. It's an organization that is the leadership is focused on servant leadership. So we're totally focused on the members and the culture and how you maintain that culture really critical. So one of the things that I want to make sure we do correctly here is pick the right successor to maintain and build that culture and keep the servant leadership model alive and well. Um, yeah, and then I do a little work for a startup company in the healthcare space, and we've got a great product. Uh, we just need an insurance company to step up and pay for it. And since it's going to take some time, it's keeping this organization together for the period of time till we start to get serious revenues in.
And Kurt, what are the ways that you feel you need to grow personally and develop to sort of realize this vision that you have for these three different businesses?
Yeah, so I think it's trying to just, every day with the situations when they come up it's how you respond, right? And how people view that. And so for me, it's, you have, whether you call it your first principles or your values or however you refer to it, but being the person that you want to be, right? And going after the goals the right way. I think about oftentimes this Peter Drucker quote, which was, management is about doing things right. Leadership is about doing the right things. And so that's a question that's always in the back of my mind. Like, are we doing the right thing? Sometimes it's hard to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, that's how you're judged. And as a leader, that's what you're responsible for.
And curious, Kurt, where do you feel most tested right now? Like, what challenges are really stretching you the most, both in leadership and in life?
Yeah, so we have our firstborn has Down syndrome, so it's a challenge with her and making sure that we've got the right support and we're doing all the things so that she's happy and fulfilled in her life. So that's one thing. We're fortunate we have 4 grandchildren, and so it's important that we spoil them appropriately. And we get a lot of feedback from their parents about that. And then for the businesses, again, it's just like, again, the succession for the CEO. How do we make sure we get that right and maintain this culture? And I mean, this institution has 45 years of profitability and growth consecutive. So how do we maintain that? We take that very seriously. And same with the startup company. It's just, we had to do a reduction recently. You want to make sure the rest of the folks that are there stay motivated, engaged. it's hard doing reductions. I've had to do that my whole career. I don't like it one bit. And it doesn't change any the older I get. So just to like, what's the appropriate staffing level, and how do you make sure, you got the entire organization aligned and focused on what you're trying to get accomplished.
So this last question is more of an invitation. You have this time and space to share with our listeners whatever is top of the mind for you, topmost in your heart for you. Anything at all. Take your time. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's this quote that I always think about too, which is, people might not remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so, knowing that we're all going to make mistakes as we go along, trying to get things done, but, don't be so hard on yourself. Maintain a good sense of humor. I found humor to be really useful in my whole career. And it oftentimes loosens things up enough where you come to a solution that you wouldn't have otherwise gotten to. So, I always tell stories about some of the funny things that happen. Like, I remember a friend of mine was very disrespectful to their boss in my presence. And I said, boy, I'm not sure you would have done that. And the person said to me, I came here looking for work. I can leave the same way, which I thought was an interesting attitude to have, but I always appreciated it. And so little things like that, just keeping things a little bit light so you can get the right things accomplished and not make it so difficult. Like, I don't ever want anybody in my group to go home feeling stressed or bad. You want them to go home feeling, energized, get some rest, come back and do it again. You want them to want to come to work, right? That's, I think, part of the job of a leader. And so I think a lot about that, particularly at this stage. This stage of life. I mean, it is different as you're going up, right? Because you've got things you want to get accomplished, time's, wasting, and it's important. That was the other thing I would just mention is that I got so fixated on time when I was in some of these roles, just because, there was 10 times more things to get accomplished that you had time to do. I wish I'd done that differently now. I wish I'd just prioritized better, focused on what was really important, and focused less on, the time.
Kurt, I appreciate the wisdom that you've shared here with me today. I've gotten so much out of this conversation, and I'm sure whoever's listening will benefit equally from what you've shared. Thank you so much for being on the True Leadership Podcast.
Thank you, Jessy. I really appreciate it. You take care of yourself.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.